back to the Radical Center with myself and Cody Vatcher. Cody, you are back. Welcome back and hello. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. The sun was just out, but now it's gone away.
That's not good.
No, it's not good at all. But yes, I'm doing great. Life is good. The warm weather is here. You know, sweating my butt off, working in high-rise buildings. Yesterday, even when I opened the door, there was no wind. So, but it's better than the freezing cold in the wintertime.
That's for sure. And honestly, we have had a lot of stormy weather and lots of rain and rain and rain and rain, but July's around the corner, so I'm really hoping that the sun comes back and is, hopefully a stable feature of our summer. Lots happening this week, lots going on. There was a big meeting in Canada this week in Alberta. The leaders of the G7 gathered and they talked about a whole lot of things, and Donald Trump was here for a bit and then he had to go early, which kind of created a big fuss on Twitter about what decision he was about to make and, kept a lot of people up. But regardless, how do you think the G7 meeting went for Mr. Carney, and what do you think is going to come out of it?
Well, that's a good question, because at the beginning of the week versus the end of the week, I had two different views, and that had a lot to do with what is happening in the Middle East. But just generally, what I would say is that, the pomp and circumstance, surrounding the G7 summit is definitely a lot more interesting than the throne speech, because it's when 7 leaders of some of the world's wealthiest and most powerful nations converge. It's a spectacle, especially when you have somebody like the President of the United States who, just by the virtue of his, I guess you call it, security package or whatever, the visuals of Air Force One landing in Calgary, there's, Marine One, there's these Ospreys that follow him everywhere. But often, the real show often lies in the interactions between the leaders, and you see that on social media between, multilateral countries, right? You saw, Keir Starmer and Donald Trump making a trade deal. You see Keir Starmer, I guess, not recognizing who the president of South Korea was, crazy stuff like that. I would say when it comes to our prime minister, it was interesting to see, some people would say, rush over Donald Trump. We saw the first interaction between him and the president of the United States, where, Trump was trash talking a prime minister that I was no fan of. But it was interesting the way that I will say that Carney dealt with Donald Trump. He even went so far as to commend Trump in front of all the world leaders for forcing the rest of the G7 nations to basically pull their socks up. So what do you think? How do you think it went for Carney?
I think it went pretty well. I think Carney's dealing with Trump the only way anyone could deal with Trump. I thought it was quite funny when he made the comment about the person named Trudeau who did this or that. Yeah, I think Carney's dealing with Trump the only way he can deal with Trump, which is by flattering him, by being very nice to him. And to be quite honest, we don't really have many other options. He is the president of the United States, which is our biggest trading partner. They did come to an agreement that they're going to have a deal within 30 days, which is great, right? Although I don't know what's going on in the background of that, because the next topic we're going to talk about is also in relation to that. But I think Carney won. He came out a winner. He was a good host. People came, they had pretty good interactions. And even though Donald Trump didn't stay and ended up leaving, and part of me thinks that perhaps he used the Middle East as an excuse to get out of there because he didn't want to stay long. But, I think it went well for Carney. I think it went as well as it could possibly go, given the circumstances.
Yeah, and I really did want to criticize the irony of it all, the fact that he has spent the past few months talking about how our previous relationship with the United States was over and elbows up and all that. But I think that the dominant issue was what's going on in the Middle East. And I have to say I don't know if I was surprised that Trump left early. I actually thought that it showed a sign that somebody was actually in control. The other thing is the United States has probably one of the closest relationships with Israel in the entire world, and I just don't know what else Donald Trump was supposed to do, because to coordinate the operations that some are saying are going on behind the scenes, you need the infrastructure of the White House. Yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to say on that.
We'll move on to our next topic. Similar to what we're talking about. Canada will impose new counter tariffs against the U.S. if it does not make a trade deal within 30 days. That's what Mark Carney's saying. So on one hand, he is being very nice to him, handling him very gently. On another hand, he is making some threats and saying, look, we're pretty serious here. This is not a joke. Don't mess around with us. What do you think of this? And what does it signal? What's going on in the background for you?
Well, I think that Mark Carney is trying to be a tough guy. I think he's trying to show to the domestic audience that, in his view, he's not going to be pushed around by the United States. But that doesn't work out very well with Donald Trump. Look, I've been saying for quite some time that Canada has to make a deal with Donald Trump. We're not going to be able to sustain a prolonged period of time in limbo at a significant disadvantage when it comes to trade. And I would just say one of the things that I have continuously been surprised by is the lengths that the corporate media has been going to say that these tariff policies are going to cause inflation and supply shortages and in the United States, and here we are 6 months later, and none of that is happening. And what I also have been saying from going back to our very first episode is that these things were a negotiating tactic. And a lot of these things, like if you read The Art of the Deal that Trump wrote himself, he lays it out like it's literally in black and white on a piece of paper. You just got to go pick up the book and read it. Basically, the cycle is Trump threatens a country, they act tough, and then both of them back down. So at the end of the day, Mark Carney, if maybe he will put these counter tariffs in place. But I think that if he does, I think that's just going to make things worse for us in the end. But again, my hunch is we are close to a deal. One of the things that I was going to say, now it popped into my mind, going back to the G7 also, is I found it quite insulting that the United States and the UK were able to sign their trade deal in Canada. And Canada got nothing. We didn't get anything out of it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that I'm insulted by Donald Trump or Keir Starmer. I'm insulted by the Prime Minister because I really do think we can make a deal. I just don't understand what's taking so long, because it's not like a deal is impossible, right? So yeah, that's what I would say. I think it's a lot of blowing smoke and trying to act tough is what I think it is. What do you think?
I think there's probably some items that are specific that we don't know about, that there's a hold up on, that they're not seeing agreement on, and they're not able to get there. But for both of them to agree that they're going to get there within 30 days, that's pretty significant to say that, you know what, all of this might be over very soon. But I also think Carney putting, a deadline to say in 30 days, if we don't have a deal, he's going to announce counter tariffs. It makes me wonder what are these things, what are the issues that are causing the holdup, and how significant are they, and how concerned either side is about them, and if they'll be able to make the deal within that time frame. But we will see what will happen. Moving on to a couple of items from provincial politics. Doug Ford has had a busy week. He had his car almost stolen, which is quite interesting. I can't believe that, anybody would try to target the premier's home, but I wonder if they even knew that that's who lives there. But he's now also talking about, our broken bail system, which he's been talking about for a while. He's not happy about that, and a lot of people aren't. And what do you think of this? Doug Ford's been talking about this stuff for a long time, and there hasn't really been much movement on it. What do you think? What do you think, his role is or should be, or where should he go from there?
Well, it's kind of funny. I'm sitting here now and I'm like, wow, I've been really negative throughout this entire episode, and I'm trying to find the positive in all of this. And then I realized I'm the one who wrote the show notes. So, oh man, bail. Look, in this country, and I do think it is a problem, much like healthcare, that is, crosses party lines. I think that it is something that goes to all levels of government. But we do have a broken bail system. It's unfortunate that it takes the premier almost getting his car stolen to be able to come out and be more forceful, at least this week. I mean, you're right, he has been pretty strong on this. But it is pretty sad, like, when the men and women in uniform who protect us, who patrol the streets, who put their lives on the line to get these bad guys off the street are really having a disservice done to them by our justice system, because they have criminals taunting them, saying that they'll be out on bail before their shift is over. There's that, and then there's the other issue that he brought up, and where there was a person in Vaughan who, I guess, their vehicle, it was in the middle of being stolen, and he walked outside with a gun and he shot it in the air, and he's the one getting charged. That's sad. That's really sad when in our country, when you can't defend yourself, you can't protect your property. And I think that Doug Ford is right that the federal government does have to act. But this is one of those things, again, it's not just it's not Mark Carney's fault. It's not Doug Ford's fault. It's not a conservative or a liberal issue. It's an issue that goes, all around the circle, as we say in Newfoundland. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I just think that, there's got to be movement on this issue somehow. And I think, it's clearly a big concern. But it's, one of the things is, like, you can't keep complaining about an issue for years and years. If you're a leader, you've got to figure out ways to move the needle on it, right? And I think that's been unfortunate for when it comes to auto theft and bail reform and crime in general, because a lot of the complaints have been directed towards the federal government, and rightfully so in most cases, but there isn't any movement on that, right? And I think, with his relationship with the new prime minister especially, I mean, the guy's just got into power, I get that, but I think these are the issues that he needs to push forward on and try to, move the needle on. Who knows? He might find himself running for leader of a federal party. One of the topics we haven't touched upon, but we might in the future, we probably will in the future, is a leadership review for Mr. Poilievre, and if he is going to, survive that or not. But who knows?
TikTok.
We might be talking about, Prime Minister Ford or Ford, the Prime Minister to be, or whatever it is. My point is, he's got to push a little bit harder on these issues, because he has been very strong on them, but there's been no movement, and you really can't do that as a leader, especially if it's something that irks you as much as this irks him. Like, he's got to get the federal government to move a little bit faster on these issues, or
and
at
I
least
also
look like he's doing something.
Yeah, that's correct. I agree with everything that you just said. And here's the thing about bail: there's a lot of people out there that they're concerned that maybe some people who deserve bail are going to get locked up. Guess what? That might happen. Justice is not always served equally. But what is the cases that get the most attention are the most violent, are the most vile, and they are, organized gangs. Again, like, this was interesting. I'm sure you saw it here in Peel Region where we live. Peel Police put on a really, really good show of showing all the guns and the drugs that they caught from, I think it was like one of the biggest busts in Canadian history or something up there. And the first question from the media was how many of these guys are on bail? And it was more than half of them. And who knows, they could all be on bail right now. It's not about locking people up who steal a pack of gum or a hairbrush. What this justice system is doing is if it's saying that you can run a multinational drug and gun organization and get bail, then those people are going to go and they're going to steal a pack of gum and a hairbrush and know that they're going to get away with it, right? I think that's what frustrates the average person. The average person is when they see the most sickest and the most vile of in our society get out on, and it's all it is it's your word, right? It just a lot of times judges, they don't enforce, cash bail, right? It's not like in the United States where you have to put up 10, 20, $30,000, or it's what they call in your own recognizance or a promise to reappear. And over and over and over again, these violent people are reoffending. They get bail, and they're doing it over and over and over again. So, and yes, it absolutely is something that I would say I think you could get support in the House of Commons. If Mark Carney said to the Conservatives, we need to toughen the bail restrictions, I think you'd get that support. But we also have to ask our elected officials, why haven't they done anything?
Yeah, and it's been some time since these issues have been consistently resurfacing. Karina Gould calls Bonnie Crombie to tell her she's not interested in becoming the Ontario Liberal leader. Very interesting. This was reported by Polly Corner. There's a lot going on in the provincial the Ontario Liberal Party. They currently have these regional meetings where they get together in every region, and the leaders there and everybody's there. Basically, it's for members and riding associations to gather and talk about issues and next steps and all of that. I'm finding this to be quite interesting. And then there is a leadership review that's been called for the fall. There was a rumor. So the reason why this phone call happened is there was a rumor that, Karina Gould may have been interested. And there, as I understand, I haven't seen this myself, but that there was a website, Karina Gould for Liberal Leader or something like that. So that's what's happened in the background. And I guess Karina is making it clear and formally clear that she's not interested in the job and she's not going for it. I don't know if anyone's interested in the job. And I think, and I said this last time. When did I say this? About a month ago. If no one wants the job, Bonnie Crombie stays. Remember, this is not a general election. The only people who will vote in this are the people who show up. If all her friends show up, and if only her friends show up, of course she's going to stay, right? But the only way that would change is if there's Karina Gould, which she's not interested, but somebody like Karina Gould or Nate or Navdeep Bains or someone who has organizational capacity, who becomes interested in the job, right? And actually starts organizing to get members in to vote for her to no longer be the leader in the leadership review, which would be the first step of their own leadership campaign. And then they would build it from there, right? So, now I'm explaining how to run a leadership campaign. Basically, you get everybody together, or you get a bunch of people to, a bunch of your organizers together, and you get everybody to start signing up members and, going into the leadership review. You get through the leadership review. Hopefully you're successful. If you're successful, that triggers a leadership election. You already have members. You're already started, right? You're ahead of the pack, right?
Have all the data. We talked about that before.
Right? Like you're already the front runner by that point because you've done the legwork. And then you continue on, you keep building, and then you make it to election day for the leadership race, and hopefully you get elected. The problem is, I don't think anyone's interested in the job. I don't think anyone's interested in doing all that work because where the party is. I think the concern is I don't know if anyone sees a path to victory in the next general election. That's the problem. And if you're somebody who is a leadership potential, you're not going to want to waste that on this, right? I'm being very blunt.
So your advice to anybody who wants to challenge Bonnie Crombie is don't.
If I want to say that, that's the problem. I want this to get interesting because I want it to get interesting.
It's good tea. Good drama, right?
I want the drama. I want the tea. So I want you people to do this.
Drama is so much better when you're sitting on the sidelines and you're not actually involved in it.
So good. It's so good. When you have nothing to do with it and you're just watching it unfold. It's so good. So no, I'm not saying don't organize. What I'm saying is it's very hard to look from a realistic point of view, and I think we're going to talk, I don't know if we're going to talk about this. No, I saw a stat, I think it was in the previous show notes, not a stat, sorry, that Doug Ford is still doing pretty well. He's what, 49%, right?
Yeah, I think that's hit. Yes, I believe so. Yes.
So he's still extremely popular, right? So it's really hard to look to the future and see the potential that a party that is still in third place, whose leader did not win her own seat, they're not like even official opposition, right? Like they're still like doing really, really poorly, right? To think that that party is going to go from where they're at today to being in government in 4 years, that's a little bit of a stretch, right? And if I'm somebody who is a potential leadership candidate, and I might be, not today, maybe I should call Bonnie and be like, I'm not.
Breaking news. Noka Dakrup announces her intention to challenge Bonnie Crombie on the floor of the convention.
Let's not go there. But let's say if I were, and I'm looking at that, I'm looking at 4 years down the line. Am I going to do all this work? What, for best case scenarios to become the leader of the opposition? Best case scenario. Best case scenario. And we talked about this so much, last year and the couple of years going into the election. Best case scenario is leader of the opposition. Best case scenario, they'll win 25 seats. Who the hell was that? And like, who would want that?
Well, and the other thing is too, is we both of us, we said in and around the time of the election. Well, I think it was kind of funny because you said right from get-go it's over for her before the writ even dropped. But what they should have done, look, the NDP looked very weak, and the results showed that the NDP started out very weak in downtown Toronto. And that would have been the biggest opportunity for, one, the leader to get her seat, and number two, to be able to take enough seats away from the NDP to the point where you can get to leader of the opposition. So what Bonnie Crombie has to ask herself is, this is 3 elections where the Ontario Liberal Party, well, let's not count the first because we all know what was going to happen, but we'll say the second and the third. There were 2 elections where the Ontario Liberal Party were gunning for government when everybody knew that that was not going to happen. And instead of recognizing, hey, I need to actually have seats in the legislature in order to form official opposition, they magically thought they were going to form government out of thin air. So what Bonnie Crombie needs to ask herself is, if, let's say she survives and stays on, and I mean, I'm not going to make any predictions right now because I just don't know. But what she has to ask herself is, looking forward, who do I want to be? What do I want to be? And what is my legacy in this party? Because maybe she does in the next election. I mean, if Doug Ford is still the premier in the next election, they'll be looking to get reelected for the 4th time in a row. And, that presents an opportunity all in of it itself. And she really needs to ask herself, okay, well, what are we really doing here? Because if I'm getting outflanked by the NDP on my left, and Doug Ford is, seen as, a red Tory. He's a moderate, and, sometimes he goes off the rails on conservative tangents, as we talk about sometimes. There's not a substantial or a significant opposition that would threaten his premiership, let alone the chance of the PCs losing government at this point. But I just think, like, I wouldn't want the job either. I don't care how much you pay me, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of grassroots organizing.
Which they're not doing, by the way.
Right. And
they don't get that message that this is about grassroots organizing.
And it's like, sure, to be fair, like, when parties lose, they go through this cycle of, internal party riff. I don't want to say civil war because that's inaccurate, but, there's finger pointing, there's a post-mortem or whatever. But this is different. This is really different. And also, too, it's like, for Bonnie Crombie, like, where does she go from here, right? She also has to ask herself that. Like, she's got 2 options. Stay on as leader or go to the private sector. Because from my perspective, she's got no political future in city politics.
She's done.
She didn't get a seat provincially. And, federally, she had a chance. Maybe she could have gotten one of the Mississauga MPs to step aside or taken an empty. You don't think? Okay, but you get my point.
No
You
way.
get my point.
Why would they do
You
that?
get my point.
Why would they do that for a leader of a provincial party who lost her own seat in Mississauga? So, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think, we'll see what happens. I don't want to predict anything too quickly because I don't know what Nate is up to. That's the only outlier in all this. I don't know what he's up to. He did get quite offended about not making it to cabinet federally. And he did run previously for this position and he did really well. And he still has the data. I just don't want to predict anything too quickly because he's the only person who I think might just do this. Like, he's got nothing to lose. He's got nothing to lose. He doesn't like being a backbencher, obviously, because he said he's been disrespected by not being in cabinet. He's not going to be in cabinet, especially after putting out that tweet about being disrespected about being in cabinet. So he's got nothing to lose. And he has the potential to do this. And the good news for Nate is that even if he does this and he wins those 25 seats, he's so young, he can run again.
He can wait it out.
He can wait it out. Right? And how long is the Doug Ford government going to last? As you said, they'd be running for their fourth term. There's no reason why they can't at least bump him down to a minority government. There's no reason.
I completely agree. Just the winning a fourth consecutive mandate, even yes, Mark Carney, he did that for the Liberals. But he was a new leader. In air quotes, at least I say. But the point is they could really drop the ball years before we're even close to an election. And the benefit of having fixed election dates is at least back when February, when we had the election. That doesn't mean that the election is going to be held in February of 2029. It's going to be June 7th. 2029. So they had a little bit of extra runway that I think that, what have they done in the past few months? Have they raised any money? I don't know. Have they gained
dinner? So I think they probably raised some money, but I don't know how much. We'll see. I think it's too early to tell, but I think the big question is whether she will stay or whether someone will force her to go. I don't think she will go on her own. I think it'll be, it'll have to be. And the other thing is there was a website put out called New Leaf Liberals, and a bunch of people were signing.
I saw that.
They're one of their demands is for her to resign. Lots of people agree with them. I agree with them. I don't think she should stay on as leader. By the way, for the record, I'm pretty sure I've said that 100 times. But I just don't think that's the way you go about it. That's just not how you do it. This is not how this is done, right? You don't put up a website and everybody's signing their name, whether it's verified